calling a timeout just to have a discussion once more with everybody. And again, no one wavered. It was one of those, kind of, real, seminal moments where all those guys, the scouts, are saying, like, we were taking this guy. And so we did. And I had a good conversation with him. His interview, when we went through the interview process with him, he's a very, very serious player. He was captain of the U18 team. Just, looked like a very driven kid, in the conversations that, that we had in our, prior to the draft with him. And I spoke with his agent shortly after I spoke with the player, and again, he was excited for his player to come to Winnipeg, and certainly shocked, I guess, at the value that we got him at.
We'll go next to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Kevin, just shifting gears to Dmitry Kuzmin, what's the scouting report on him, and are you expecting him to be with Flint in the Ontario League this year? I know they've chosen him previously in the import draft.
Yes, so that's where we believe he is. I talked to him after the draft, after we drafted him as well, and that seems to be the plan. He would have been over here last year had the OHL played, so that's always been his intention. Real skilled defenseman. We joked about the lacrosse style goal there. I asked him how many times he's done it outside of the U18s, and he said he's done it 3 times. So he's pretty talented, good hands, moves well, sees the ice. He's he's not the tallest player, but he's real, he's got good thickness to him, good strength to him. So, we project him that, he's got a pro style of body along with the skill. So, it'll be interesting to see him, come over here, and certainly, excited to see him play.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from 680 CGOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Gregor. Kevin, would it be safe to say that Dmitri Rashevsky might be one of the most interesting draft choices of your tenure here in Winnipeg?
So it's an interesting story. Obviously, he's gone through the draft twice. He's, a kind of a late bloomer physically. He's still got, some ways to go with respect to getting, bigger and stronger. But, watching a ton of video on him and just, seeing the progression that he's had and the kind of the breakout year, with 44 goals last 2 years ago, but not getting drafted, and watching him play, in the various different leagues, in the KHL. We just kept coming back to, like, why not draft this player? He's further on down the development curve. He's got only 1 year left on his contract over in Russia. The conversations that we had with him were that, he's looking to come over and willing to play in the American Hockey League, to develop. Again, as soon as we drafted him, our PR department showed us his Instagram account. He was just so thankful and posted it right away. So I think it's a special thing for those kind of players that get passed over a couple of times. There's a little bit of a chip on their shoulders. So I think there's a lot of skill. Can play either wing. 6'1", but I think there's still room to grow into his body.
We'll go next to Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Hey, Kevin, it's not often I know that you get players who are ready to step into the lineup right away, but it seems like this year in particular, there's a lot of a look ahead to the future with, certainly Chibrikov saying he's going to be in Russia for 2 more years. You've got Lucius, who's going to university, that kind of thing.
So I think, with the COVID year, I don't know that that's going to be unexpected. Like a lot of these players, not necessarily missed a year of development. Certainly the European players got a chance to play more than the North American players. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, again, in Lucius's situation, he's going to a real great development program there, great coaching. I think that's, that's good for him. A lot of these players probably still physically need to mature, when you're drafting kind of higher up in the draft, maybe in the top end, maybe they're more physically mature and ready to step in. But even hearing some of the, and again, I don't know what they're going to do, but even hearing some of the, the top 5 prospects, they're talking about going back to school. So I think it was an interesting time for everybody's development. And this draft might have to be one of those long-term approaches for not only us, but, for some of the other teams.
We'll go next back to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Kevin, what does it mean to replenish the forward pool? Obviously, you've graduated a lot of your top prospects up front. How do you see that? Do you see it as more of a strength coming out of these last 2 drafts?
Well, we were fortunate that, we were able to have some skilled players at the positions that, that we were drafting. Again, you don't know how that's going to unfold in front of you, but, we like our draft. I know we didn't have a lot of swings of the bat. We did try to move down in the 5th round there to try to gain some picks, but I think pick 127 was the last pick that was able to move down. It was an interesting dynamic at the end of the draft, actually. There was a lot of kind of probably maybe 10 to 12 instances where teams tried to move down and there were no takers. So it was I think that what that said to me was, people were comfortable, just kind of taking the players, where they were, and not looking to jump up in the draft as it moved on. Probably because of COVID and just how the scouting season went.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, Kevin. Just reflecting on some of the highest heights your club has hit, I was thinking of that 2018 team, Western Conference Finals, and just the number of ELC players that you had, real value contracts, young players performing and producing. I'm wondering if you can sort of connect that thought to what it's like on draft day. Do you think that far ahead, or can you at least sort of put into words the importance of those young ELC players?
Well, I think for sure you can see the importance, and you put that into perspective of where you're at within your organization, and it took us a long time to get to that point where we had all those young players on ELCs, and it took us some a little bit of pain to get to that point too, where you're maybe outside of the playoffs looking in, and you're drafting higher, but it is important. And certainly when you're a team like us right now, the main importance is trying to find those value picks wherever you're picking, and I feel really good sitting here today. Of course, everyone says that right after the draft, but it's just the type of player and the type of people that I think we drafted today. I think they're pretty driven individuals, and they're all they all have skill. They all have good hockey sense. They all skate pretty well. So you kind of hope that that gives you that depth in that prospect pool, that someday you can graduate to the National Hockey League and get to that point that you're talking about. Because in the salary cap world here right now, and you see like what some top end players are getting in a flat cap world, or at least in a cap that's going to move slowly for a while. It's really important to have those kind of things coming.
We'll go back to Kelly Moore from 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Kevin, apologies if you had mentioned this before when you were talking about Chibrikov, but I couldn't help but you were talking about how resolute the entire staff was on taking him. Is there any one thing specifically that caused the staff to be that way, whether it's maybe an intangible that doesn't include just his hockey skills?
Well, so they described his game as very, very slippery, very sneaky, inside in the offensive zone. Very good playmaker. The ability to kind of from the blue line in, just what he can do, and the dynamic plays that he can make. So those are the things that I think really stood out when we sat there and compared where he was sitting in the draft relative to where he was sitting on our draft list. And again, we don't we don't draft by the passport, and thus we've picked three players this this draft that many would have thought that we wouldn't have picked before. But again, there's a reality that when you've got a good player like that, you've got to make sure that you do what's right for your organization, and taking him was the right thing for us.
Go back to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weber.
Kevin, a busy few days ahead. What's your assessment of the goalie market, and is Laurent Brossoit still a candidate to be your backup goalie next year?
Well, we've had some conversations, with LB and his group. I guess I wouldn't rule anything, out when it comes to that point. But I think he's a guy that's going to take a look at free agency and see where it goes. So, we'll look at it here over the next couple of days and make some decisions.
And final question to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Kevin, just curious, you mentioned last night, I think, that at the end of the first round, it ended up kind of staying pretty much true to form, how you guys had it on your list. How consistent were rounds 2 through 7? Like, did it go completely off the rails with all kinds of off the book sort of picks?
Not as much as I thought it would. I think that the group of players, I think we listed like 75 players on one list that, and I think every single player, maybe except for one, went. And then we had, different sub lists that, beyond that stayed, pretty true to, to the top end, of it and players going. But there's always going to be players that are selected that maybe even aren't on your list. And it's kind of, for us, we obviously didn't have a 6th and a 7th. So, those things I'd have to go back and take a look at and, pay as much closer attention as to why maybe we didn't list some of these guys or didn't, some of the guys that we had maybe ahead of some of those guys didn't get listed or get picked. But, it was interesting though, again, just going back to, when trying to move down to gain more picks at 156 and there were no takers. And generally there's always those kind of things. So I think that was kind of an interesting dynamic in the draft that, you saw some guys even trade out of the 7th round. There was lots of guys that were trying to do that and that didn't happen, as well. So this is going to be an interesting, going back 3, 4, 5 years or, flash forward 3, 4, 5 years to see, how this pandemic draft, really unfolds.